Today, we are talking 12 fantasy football league winners, 12 guys who are going to win you fantasy leagues that you can get at all different points of your fantasy draft so you never miss out on the guys who are going to separate you from the competition in your 2024 fantasy football drafts. Let's not waste any time and let's jump right into the top 12 fantasy football league winners for 2024 fantasy football. Starting with number one, the wide receiver you have heard me raving about all offseason, and that is Chris Olave. Pretty much no matter what draft pick you have, you should be targeting Chris Olave in your second round of your fantasy drafts. There is arguably no more than 3 skill gaps between the wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 that are greater than the New Orleans Saints and Chris Olave. He is so superior to any other wide receiver or tight end on his team. Rashid Shaheed is the second best option on that Saints passing offense. Chris Olave is going to get so much volume. He is going to get so many yards. He's going to get force-fed the ball in the passing game. The Saints are a mediocre offense at best, meaning they're going to be playing from behind in a majority of games. Derek Carr is going to need to throw the ball downfield. That has been stressed over and over and over again, that Derek Carr can only check the ball down to Alvin Kamara. This season, he is going to finally need to air the ball out, and there is only one guy who is talented enough to be the beneficiary of Derek Carr throwing the ball downfield, and that is Chris Olave. We're talking about a guy who had, I believe, over 140 targets last year and over 1,200 yards, and this is a guy that you can get in the second round. Obviously, that is a no-brainer pick. He has only improved his first 2 years in the NFL. I see no difference from that continuing this year. We need a few more touchdowns. I believe he only had 4 or 5 last season. That is going to increase this season with Derek Carr continuing to air the ball out. Chris Olave is a must-draft wide receiver in the second round, especially if you go with a running back like Bijan Robinson or Breece Hall in that first round. He is as safe and solid as it comes. Draft Chris Olave in the second round of your drafts. Must-draft player number 2 is going to be Rachaad White. There have been questions on who is going to be this year's Rachaad White. Why can't it be Rachaad White himself? There has been nothing that has changed other than drafting like a 4th-round running back in Bucky Irving, who is only good at exactly what Rachaad White is good at. He is not going to see a role in this Buccaneers offense this season. He is a pass catcher and nothing more, and that is exactly what Rachaad White thrives in, is the passing game. We saw the connection that he had with Baker Mayfield. We saw his durability last season where he was on the field so much, nearly every down all season long. We have seen that he's going to be that workhorse running back regardless of his efficiency. Efficiency on the ground is one of the most overrated stats because when you get the volume that Rachaad White is going to get, he's going to be effective no matter what. We still have Mike Evans. We still have Chris Godwin. We still have Cade Otton. Those guys are going to run routes deep down the field. We have seen how effective they can be. So Rachaad White is still going to have plenty of room for checkdowns. The Buccaneers are going to be one of, if not the highest passing offense in the NFL this season. They aren't great on the ground, but man, oh man, Rachaad White can dominate, especially in the PPR formats of your fantasy leagues. A guy you can get in the 3rd or 4th round. Sign me up. Player number 3, going later in your drafts, right around round 7 to 8, and that is Ladd McConkey, the rookie for the Chargers. We saw Keenan Allen leave the Chargers. We saw Mike Williams leave the Chargers. We saw Austin Eckler leave the Chargers. We saw Gerald Everett leave the Chargers. This is 4 of their top weapons from last season gone. McConkey, even if he isn't the wide receiver 1 on the Chargers, which I believe he will be, there's going to need to be the void filled in some way between those 4 players who have seen an unbelievable amount of targets from Justin Herbert the last several seasons. I believe Ladd McConkey is going to be a PPR monster. I believe he's going to be used quite frequently in the slot. Even if Josh Palmer ends up being that wide receiver 1, for a round 7, round 8 price, Ladd McConkey has as much upside as absolutely anybody going in that range. He is a smash in the 7th to 8th round of your fantasy football leagues. And I believe, quick side note here on the Chargers, I know everyone's saying that Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers are going to be one of the most run-dominant teams in the NFL. I completely disagree. Where is the talent on that roster? It's at the quarterback position, and it's at the new young wide receiver in Ladd McConkey. Those are the two best players on that offense. Gus Edwards is nothing special. J.K. Dobbins can't stay on the field. These guys are not going to be effective on the ground. Justin Herbert is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. And time again, we have seen him just sling the ball. And I understand it's an entirely new coaching staff. But if you're Jim Harbaugh, you need to get the ball in your best player's hands. And that is Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey. I believe they are not going to be nearly as run heavy as people are making it out to be. All right, let's keep rolling. Player number 4. Let's fill up that tight end position. My number 1 tight end in fantasy drafts this season is Dalton Kincaid. Talk about wide receiver 1 or tight end 1, number 1 option, whatever you want to call it, for one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Let's talk about vacated targets again. We got Stefon Diggs leaving and we got Gabe Davis leaving. I am so high on the Bills' positional players this season. We're just going to combine them together. My 4 and 5 players are Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman. One of these guys is bound to take over the number 1 option role. And the other player is going to take over the number 2 option. For Josh Allen, a guy who has led the NFL in passing attempts for years on end, who's one of the most talented offensive quarterbacks that we have ever seen. The Bills are going to be a top 5 offense just like they are every other year. And where is that going to come? It's going to come from James Cook, a running back who I am extremely high on this year. It's going to come from Keon Coleman, and it's going to come from Dalton Kincaid. Why not take a shot on arguably one of the 2 tight ends in Dalton Kincaid and Travis Kelce, and potentially Mark Andrews, but I'm high on Zay Flowers. Dalton Kincaid and Travis Kelce are the only 2 options in the NFL that are going to be the number 1 options in the passing game for their quarterbacks. Sign me up for Dalton Kincaid in the 5th or 6th round as the number 1 option on that offense. Sign me up. Not to mention, you can get Keon Coleman, who could also be that other number 1 option in the 8th or 9th round, who's at like ADP pick 100. This is so easy, you guys. The later rounds in your drafts could not be any easier. We're talking about Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, and a few other guys who are going to be the wide receiver 1s on their team with some of the best and most talented quarterbacks in the NFL. And you can get a wide receiver 1 that late. No-brainer picks in Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman. These guys are bound to boom this season. Their wide receiver rooms are not that good. The Chargers have Josh Palmer and who? DJ Chark. Ladd McConkey's going to go off, no doubt. The Bills have who? Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel. What have either of those 2 guys done? There's no way. We're talking about top caliber draft picks. These guys are going to go off in 2024. Let's jump to player number 6, a must-draft player for this season, and that is Tyjae Spears, going in the 8th, 9th, even 10th round of your fantasy drafts. A guy who is a much superior talent to Tony Pollard. A guy who was a huge, effective player even with Derrick Henry on the field last season. We saw what he can do in the reception game. He is going to get so much work this season. I believe at worst it is going to be a 50-50 split with Tony Pollard. But I believe Tyjae Spears is a much superior talent. I believe beyond Calvin Ridley, he is the number 2 option on that offense. We have seen Will Levis. I believe he is not going to be able to throw the ball that much downfield. We have seen what shaky quarterbacks love to do, and that is check the ball down to Tyjae Spears. He is going to be a huge beneficiary. And going near the 10th round of your drafts, absolutely no-brainer for a guy who could potentially be a running back 1 on his offense this season. Number 7, James Cook. We mentioned those Bills players before. We are hammering the Bills players for this season. James Cook is going to be the best player on this offense. We saw how efficient of a runner he was last season. We saw how efficient he was in the passing game last season. With Stefon Diggs and Gabe Davis gone, look out. He could see more and more PPR monster numbers for this season. He just needs to be able to punch the ball into the end zone a couple more times in order to break in to that top 8, top 5, top 3 running backs on the season. And I absolutely believe that he can do it. Before we get into the last few guys, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It would greatly help me out. Leave a comment below. If you are still here 10 minutes in this video, put hashtag Bills Mafia in the comments below. We are all over the Bills players this season. Let's keep it rolling. For the last 5 or 6 league winners that are going to win you fantasy drafts this season. Some of my most drafted players. Number 8 is going to be Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys. Talk about wide open receiving rooms. We have CeeDee Lamb, who at the time of this recording is potentially going to hold out. So if that happens, Jake Ferguson, and don't get me wrong, I am not that high of a believer on Jake Ferguson as a talented tight end. But when it comes to volume, Dak Prescott is one of the most pass-heavy quarterbacks in the NFL. They traded away Tony Pollard. They brought in Zeke Elliott. The Cowboys are not going to be good on the ground. Dak Prescott, in my opinion, is an elite regular season quarterback, and Jake Ferguson and fantasy football seasons as a whole only matter in the regular season. Dak's going to be a great fantasy option, and Jake Ferguson as the number 2 option and potentially number 1 option if CD holds out on the Dallas Cowboys. He is going to get as much volume as any tight end in the NFL this season, and I will stand by that. He is my tight end number 3, and I believe is the biggest tight end value in fantasy drafts this season, along with Dalton Kincaid. Get Jake Ferguson in the 7th to 8th round of all your fantasy drafts, and you will not regret it. You will solidify a safe, solid, and massive upside option at the tight end position in Jake Ferguson. Player number 9, Terry McLaurin. Quick disclaimer here that I want to put out there is there are still rumors of Brandon Ayuk going to the Commanders, and if he does, after you guys have seen me make this video, then Terry McLaurin will be off of the league winners title, but he is a must draft as of right now. We're talking about a guy who is the clear number 1 option yet again. You can put him in this same category as Chris Olave with the rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels. This will be the best quarterback that he has had in his time in Washington. He is as safe as it comes when you're talking about volume and 1,000-yard reception seasons. He is a lock for 1,000 yards this season, and they just traded away Jahan Dotson yesterday to the Eagles. For one, Jahan Dotson is not a good football player, so I don't really know why all these analysts are suddenly saying that the Eagles have the best wide receiver core in the NFL. That doesn't change anything for their wide receiver core, but that just proves even more how much room there is for Terry McLaurin to thrive in this Commanders offense this season. Smash Terry McLaurin in the 7th round. He is a no-brainer, clear-cut wide receiver 1 on this Commanders offense that's going to be playing from behind. They're not going to elect to throw the ball first if they have the choice, but when you are as poor of a team as they are going to be behind in games. Jaden Daniels is going to rely on the reliant veteran guy who has been there for a long time, not to mention that he is the only option on that entire receiving core who is going to get anything done. Terry McLaurin will get so much volume this season. Last 3 guys, you can get a little bit deeper in your leagues. Number 10 is Jalen Polk of the New England Patriots, another rookie wide receiver. This is a guy who you can get in the 12th round and on of your fantasy drafts, who is going to be the wide receiver 1 on his team. You're getting a wide receiver 1 on his team in the 12th round. I'll say it again, a wide receiver 1 in the 12th round. You have to draft Jalen Polk, and nobody else is anywhere near the potential and upside that Polk has in the 12th round and on. For a rookie wide receiver and a rookie quarterback, we have seen the rookie quarterbacks and Drake May, who I believe is going to win the starting job. They rely on veteran guys, they rely on running backs for checkdowns, and they rely on fellow rookies. What did we see with CJ Stroud last season? He had a massive connection with Tank Dell, who was going right around this range that Jalen Polk is this season. Jalen Polk could be the next Tank Dell, could be this year's Tank Dell with Drake May at quarterback. It is a no-brainer to draft a wide receiver 1 with a rookie-to-rookie connection on a team that is going to be terrible and behind every game that will have to throw the ball. Sign me up for Jalen Polk in every single 12th round pick that I can get. No-brainer pick. Last 2 guys. Number 11 is Zamir White, the workhorse running back for one of the most run-dominant teams in the NFL, the LA Raiders. We have seen that their new coach loves to run the ball as much as he possibly can. Last season, Aiden O'Connell didn't even complete or maybe even attempt a pass in an entire second half of a football game last season. It was ridiculous. The Raiders just want to pound the ball on the ground. Zamir White is so much superior to Alexander Mattison, it is not even funny. You're talking to a Vikings fan right here at heart. Alexander Mattison is such a bad running back. Zamir White is going to get 3-down work game after game, quarter 1 through quarter 4, week 1 through week 18. It's Zamir White all day long. The Raiders are not going to be that good, but he is a top 2 option on this offense, and they have to give him the ball if they want to have a chance. You got to give the ball to your best player if you want to have a chance. The final guy, we made it to number 12, the number 12 league winner that you can get later, right around this 12th, 13th, 14th round of your drafts, is Romeo Doubs of the Green Bay Packers. Again, I understand that the Packers have quote-unquote said that Jayden Reed is their number 1 wide receiver, but if you look at a target standpoint, if you look at a volume standpoint, if you look at effectiveness, Romeo Doubs is right there with Jayden Reed, right there with Christian Watson. He is superior to Dontavian Wicks. We saw that Romeo Doubs was the go-to guy in the playoffs last season. Jordan Love has said that he loves his connection with Romeo Doubs. I believe they even slated Doubs as the number 1 wide receiver on the depth chart this preseason. We're talking about a guy who could be the number 1 option on the Green Bay Packers at the wide receiver position, who you can get beyond the 12th round of your fantasy drafts with one of the most pass-heavy offenses in the NFL. Jordan Love is an up-and-coming star. We know what the Packers have to offer in the passing game, and we know that Romeo Doubs could potentially be the wide receiver 1. And if he's not, let's say he's just barely the wide receiver 2, it's a 14th round pick on one of the most pass-heavy offenses in the NFL, probably a top 10 offense in the NFL, and you can get this guy who's potentially going to be a wide receiver 1 on that team in the 14th round. Absolutely. Don't even hesitate. Romeo Doubs is a must draft player. So here we are, the 12 league winners: Chris Olave, Rachaad White, Ladd McConkey, Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, Tyjae Spears, James Cook. We got 3 Bills players right there: Jake Ferguson, Terry McLaurin, Jalen Polk, Zamir White, and Romeo Doubs. Those are my 12 most drafted, must draft, league winning players for fantasy football 2024. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of these 12 players, and let me know a league winner that you are targeting in your fantasy drafts this season. One more time, do me one huge favor, take 2 seconds, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. It would be greatly appreciated. We got a couple more videos coming your way this week, and then we are right around the corner from 2024 fantasy football. Cannot wait. Hope you guys have a great day. I appreciate you guys. Have a good rest of your weekend. God bless.